Welcome to the second episode of the monthly AskOkey podcast. My name's Peter, and I'm here with Okey, and we're going to entertain you for the next little while with delving into various aspects of classic and not so classic menswear. Now, you've been doing something called the AskOkey IG University. I have to apologize, I don't follow it. What is it?
Well, AskOkey IG Uni, as we call it. It was something that morphed spontaneously, really. As you know, Instagram is structured for essentially two platforms. There's the Reels, the main page where you put up the Reels, and the posts. And the stories are just for, let's say, more casual media or content. And other platforms might use it to sort of share, let's say, less refined photos or images or videos.
Right.
However, I'm not sure if we actually came up with it or it's something that just sort of spawned itself spontaneously, but I would get questions in the DM meaning direct messaging, and I would respond to them. But as we grew, there were so many questions coming in, and very often certain questions would be repeated.
Right.
And so I came up with this idea that, well, I could answer a question and then post it on the stories so everyone could watch it and see it.
Right.
And that's how it really started.
Okay.
It was basically a way to save myself time and work by essentially posting for general consumption questions that I thought applied to everyone. Now, of course, I use my discretion. And so there's certain questions or messages that I censor. Or if they're private enough, I might just respond to the specific question or person asking the question on DM. But if I thought it was a question that could serve the general audience, then I would respond and then I would repost it. And that's how we started.
Right.
And so we found that people, it was quite engaging. And then a lot of the questions were coming on DM, and we said, wait a minute, why don't we structure this? Why don't we sort of create a more robust structure for it? And that's how we came up with AskOkey IG Uni, with the help of Captain, of course, and the media team. So they structured it as a classroom that takes place 3 times a week. When we started, it was every day, but it got a little bit too let's say, too chore. Yeah, well, I'm not.
Much like work.
It was a lot of work, and it just wasn't. There wasn't enough time in between sessions for the students or the audience to digest the lessons learned.
Yes.
So what we now had to do was to space it out. So rather than do it every day, we do it Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
And what sort of questions? What are most of the questions about?
Well, generally clothing. And so what we did was, initially, it was sort of very freewheeling. Anyone could ask any question on DM and I'll repost it. But what we did was to create a bit more order around it. And so we would frame the questions ourselves, or we would frame the subject with a reel. So we would frame a couple of questions, and then we would pick a reel from one of our old videos that speaks to that particular subject. And then we would play the reel and then post the questions. And that will be the subject for conversation for the entire day.
Okay. And if the questions are about clothing, what sort of things do the people want to know?
Everything, really, Pete. As I said earlier, we often dictate the subject. So it could be sort of jacket length, lapel width, gorge height. I mean, minutiae, very technical. And I think that is the angle we bring to the market that most other platforms don't.
Right.
And so other platforms, they sort of speak in generalities about, things like what should be your first suit.
Yeah. We've all heard that one.
Absolutely. Or should you get a gray suit? And so these are all sort of very, I would call them elementary.
Well, they're rather shop worn. I mean, You don't need more people telling you why you need a gray and a blue suit.
Absolutely.
And what's astounding is that there's anybody out there who doesn't know.
Yeah.
Having been sort of deluged with expertise on social media for so many years, you'd think everybody would know that. But things like jacket length, now that really gets into a lot of things because of the size of the man, the shape of the man, also this whole optical illusion thing. You know, if you take a photograph with the camera a little bit high, the jacket looks longer or it looks shorter. So there's a lot you can say about that sort of.
Absolutely. The topics are very what I would call sophisticated, often quite technical. So we don't go deep into tailoring such that the audience gets lost in the minutiae. We keep it very general, but we keep it very sophisticated. Things you won't get elsewhere. For instance, you know, how high should your gorge be, or how wide should a lapel be? These things seem rather obvious, or they seem simple, but they're not so simple, and not a lot of people know exactly how to approach this thing. So a lot of the questions are framed around these rather small technicalities, and we find that that tends to be very useful for the audience.
Well, it would be, you see, because those aren't the kind of things that you can learn. And you can go in, if you go into a shop and ask the man in the shop, say, well, why are the lapels wide or narrow? He'll give you a pat answer because he wants you to buy some.
Correct.
So I guess with the IG University, people are getting a disinterested or an impartial talk about it. Now, that leads on then to this magnificent suit that you've got on this evening. And
Thank you.
What I've noticed, Oki, about you is that your clothes never look as if you've worn them before. I mean, when I have a suit from a tailor, within about 2 weeks, it looks like I've been wearing it for the last 20 years. And it's got ash on it, you know, and creases and things. But yours invariably look as though they just came out of the bag and literally off the truck from the tailor.
Well, I do own a lot of clothes, Captain Rice.
Well, maybe that's got something to do with it. But
I do have the unique advantage of having quite a broad wardrobe.
So they don't get worn out so easily.
No.
Because I would be interested to know what that suit is going to look like, say after you've worn it 100 times, and how durable these sorts of suits are. Because I know mine are durable just simply because I've had them for so long. I know that they hold it up. But I'm just thinking about this sort of suit that you've got on now. Could somebody wear that say once a week for 5 years without it completely losing its shape and looking baggy? And
well, the longevity of a suit is a function of two things, Pete. One is the fabric, and the second, of course, is the construction or the making, as it were. Okay. So they both have to go together.
Right.
I mean, you can't have one without the other.
Right.
If you have great fabric and you have shoddy construction, then it falls apart at the seams.
Now, what do we mean by construction? You mean the stitching?
Meaning the way it's put together.
Right, okay.
Right? So, you know, we're not talking about the cuts now. We're just talking about the mechanics or the mechanical parts, because, I mean, it's a mechanical object, right? I mean, it's an inanimate object that functions as part of your daily mechanics. So
physics.
There are friction parts, there are parts that wear and tear, there's tension on it. There are parts that wear when you sit down, the elbows and so on and so forth. So
the elbows get shiny.
Exactly. So things like that, like friction areas, those are going to come down to the quality of the cloth.
Yeah, okay.
And then the tension points, right, is going to come down to how well the garment is put together.
Yes, okay.
You understand? So,
yes.
so that the longevity of a suit, I mean, you know, the rule of thumb is that obviously, just like your shoes, you shouldn't wear the same suit on 2 consecutive days.
Let it breathe out a bit.
It's recommended to leave it at least a day, preferably 2, to air out, because it's this is made from organic material. Wool is organic.
It is.
And so you have to allow sort of the wool relax and sort of air out to prolong or to extend the life of the garment itself.
Now,
However, going back to your initial question, I mean, this is a mohair suit I've got on. It's about 11 ounces or thereabout. Not heavy, nothing sort of, but I believe with good care, a suit like this you can wear for a very long time. I mean, you can get a good 10, 15, maybe even more years out of it.
Yes.
If worn sparingly.
Yes, obviously you don't want to wear it every day.
No.
Now, but does the cut also have some effect on how long it's going to last? Because presumably, if it's very, very narrow, it's going to get baggy in the knees fast.
Of course.
Or it's going to get a bit maybe sort of pulled in the chest or the waist.
It's more sort of the friction points. So when you wear your clothes very close to the body, there's just not a whole lot of room, for instance, between your thighs, right? So all the friction areas when you're wearing your clothes very close to your body, of course, they're going to wear off much sooner than clothes that are cut away from the body, as we do.
Now, when you say fabric, I've heard it said that cashmere wears out rather quickly. Is that true?
It's very fragile.
Okay.
So cashmere is it's a luxury fabric. It's not something. It's not a utility cloth. It's a luxurious cloth. It's very dressy. I should even say extravagant cloth. So it's something you might want to use for a unique dinner or evening jacket.
Right. Okay.
Cashmere suits I don't approve of. Well, first of all, because cashmere doesn't hold up for trousers. You know, it's a very, very fragile fabric. It doesn't hold up with it. It doesn't hold a crease, for instance, and then obviously wears off very quickly at all the friction points. So things like cashmere, I would reserve them if you must have them for, let's say, extravagant items like an overcoat.
Well, with an overcoat, doesn't need to hold a crease.
No, an overcoat doesn't need to hold a crease, of course.
And it's not worn next to the body.
And it's not worn.
Tear wouldn't.
Absolutely, and it's worn sparingly, even when in season.
True, yes.
So things like a jacket, like an elegant evening jacket, not dinner jacket, but like an evening, something you would wear out to dinner at night.
Right.
With your paramour, for instance.
Right.
You want sort of that luxurious feel to it. Of course, cashmere will be but certainly not as a workhorse.
Not for regular, but mohair, you reckon, is strong enough?
It does. It is. Mohair is it's obviously, pure mohair is very brittle. Yeah. So you can never use 100% mohair. Of course, is a hair from a certain goat, type of goat.
That's right. Yes.
And it's very brittle, so it has to be blended with wool, to stabilize it.
So why do they use it at all?
Because it's porous.
Right.
So it almost feels like a fresco, but it's just it's smoother. It has a finer hand. It's not as open woven as a fresco. A fresco meaning a high twist, which is also wool, which is proper wool like sheep wool. But mohair is it breeds. It has that. It's a bit porous. It's more porous than, let's say, worsted. Like pure worsted wool.
And it's got a slight shine to it.
It's got a slight sheen to it, exactly. Yeah. So you would use it for let's say, more tropical suits. Right. Or let's say elegant evening wear, because it has a bit of a shine to it, almost kind of like a silk. It looks almost like silk from a distance. So it does have a slight sheen to it. So if you're looking for a nice dinner jacket, for instance.
Right, yes.
You could make a nice, beautiful dinner jacket.
As opposed to barathea.
Absolutely. Yes. So barathea would be, is a bit more, it's a tighter weave.
It is.
And it's much more, it's denser.
Indeed.
So mohair would be a good substitute for a dinner jacket for more tropical weather.
Interesting. Now, that brings me to something that's been on my mind. I won't say it's been exercising my mind, but I've been thinking about it. Take the jacket. What is the future of the jacket? Because as more and more men don't wear anything except shirts and shorts or shirts and pants of some sort of description, what happens to the regular traditional man's jacket with lapels and buttons and pockets? Like what you're wearing, like what I'm wearing. I mean, not necessarily part of a suit, but the sports jacket or the blazer. Are people going to continue wearing them?
Well, Pete, we've had this conversation at Newsom. I've had it with Prakash when he was here in the studio.
Okay.
And you and I have had this conversation either in private or even on stage, on camera. Look, what we're seeing is that the market is bifurcated, right? The era of the man in the gray flannel suit is gone. So men are no longer required, of course, to wear a suit to the office, to most offices. So that what you're seeing are really true enthusiasts wearing suits.
Okay.
And the suits they're wearing aren't just sort of your workhorse, plain worsted navy in twill or like a serge. What used to be the workman's uniform or the office man's uniform. People are getting a lot more creative in the choice of cloth, in the cut, and so on and so forth. So what I'm seeing is that
sort of liberating, in fact, isn't it?
Right, absolutely. There is no dearth of enthusiasm amongst the aficionados. There is no dearth of enthusiasm. I don't see that going away anytime soon. Now, of course, people are free to sort of do as they wish or wear whatever. But I think I've even become more recently very conscious when I go out and I'm dressed up and I look around me. I am not disappointed, really. I feel, I look at it more like I have an opportunity.
Indeed. So
I have an opportunity, and this is not just, and I see it happen all the time. The way I'm treated,
Yes.
by everyone, especially the fairer sex. And they notice these things. Women especially, they notice when they see a man who is properly well dressed, especially in a sea of slovenly looking people. They do pay attention.
Yes.
So I think at the end of the day, it's an era that offers that choice.
So it becomes more of a niche, hence customizable market. Now, on that subject, summer is coming. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, I remember there was a time when you got jackets for the summer, they didn't have a full lining in them. And what would you call that? A half lining. A half lining. And some of them were what you would call unstructured. Now what exactly is an unstructured jacket, as opposed to the kind of jacket that you're wearing or I'm wearing right now?
Well, if you think about what is a jacket, really, it's a piece of cloth. Right? You take a fabric, basically you take a bolt of fabric, right? It's made out of a piece of cloth. Now, what makes a jacket is sort of all the structure that goes into it that allows it to sit on your body and to sort of to have form. Right? So think about it when you look at sort of a man in a jacket, right, in a tailored jacket, there is a certain form to it.
There is.
And that form is designed essentially to conceal the man's natural attributes or physique.
Yes.
To flatter, as it were.
Which an unstructured jacket can't really do.
Absolutely, because an unstructured jacket is it's like taking a piece of cloth and just it's like wearing a toga, really.
Right. So all your jackets, even the summer jackets, all that we see here are all structured.
They're all structured.
And are any of them half-lined?
Some are half-lined, but you can have structure with half-lining.
Yeah, so you got the structure.
Because the structure is in front. The back is basically, there's nothing in the back. The back is...
So you still have the canvas.
You still have the full canvas. You have
basting.
The basting. You have this, structure in the shoulder. And so on and so forth. So you can have a fully structured jacket, summer jacket.
Yes.
And if you want to have a bit more ventilation, you can do that obviously in the choice of cloth or just having it half-lined. That way you have a bit more ventilation from the back.
So we come back again to the merging or the two things, which is the fabric and the construction.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. But to address your initial question, you say what sets a structured jacket apart from an unstructured jacket? So a structured jacket, of course, such as I'm wearing, such as you're wearing, It's basically, it's a fully canvas jacket. And what is a canvas? A canvas is what gives the jacket its shape and structure.
Right.
So the canvas, obviously, if it's bespoke, it's molded and it's shaped according to the customer's physique to flatter or to accentuate certain things. For instance, in our drape cut, we would say shape the chest. We would shape the canvas in the chest to create sort of that illusion of strength in the chest.
Yes.
Okay? So you can shape the canvas, you can shape it all the way through the waist, and the canvas usually runs from the top all the way to the bottom, to the hem.
Yes.
And it basically gives the coat that structure in front of it. Yes. The other part of structure obviously comes in the shoulders.
Now, the canvas, is it still made from horsehair?
Well, there are different types. You know, there's horsehair, there's linen canvas, there's actually cotton canvas. So for warmer climates, for instance, I do know that the Italians use linen a lot for their canvassing because you can still, it's a softer.
Right.
It's not as rigid as horsehair.
Right.
So for softer tailoring, a lot of tailors would sort of go for linen canvas.
Yes, except of course, as you wear,
which you can't shape as well. It doesn't. It doesn't hold as well as horsehair. But the advantage being, of course, that it produces a much lighter garment.
But as we were saying earlier about longevity, presumably part of what gives a jacket its longevity is the canvas and the quality of the canvas, and that helps to keep its shape.
Correct.
Otherwise, it'll gradually, eventually just hang on.
Fall apart, like a fused garment, for instance.
Yeah.
So you could fuse a garment, like a lot of the industrial garments you see
they're glued together.
Are fused. So basically the two parts are glued together. There's no interlining. There's no canvas in between. So when you see a fused garment, after a while, it starts to sort of pop.
Yeah,
so it starts to bubble.
Yeah.
Or God forbid, you would send it to a dry cleaners. It would come back looking like something out of
sometimes
out of Twilight Zone.
Little ripples on it.
It's got ripples, and so it forms bubbles because it's glue. And when you run a hot iron over glue, what happens?
Yes,
it melts.
That's right, of course.
Right, because you know the two panels, the two pieces are glued together with fusing. And so when you run a hot iron, it melts the fusing, and it creates this sort of ugly looking ripples. And that's why you can tell a fused garment from a mile away.
Yes, and does
that make sense?
No, it does. It does. Now, while we continue here, jackets, because this raises another point. AskOkey has just introduced a 3-button.
Correct.
Or a 3-roll 2 jacket.
Correct.
Now, if I may, I'm just going to get this one down here because this is an example, I think, of the 3-roll 2 jacket.
That is correct.
Now, what happens when you make one of these compared to making your regular 1-button or 2-button jackets?
Well, it has to be redesigned completely, and I think the error or the mistake a lot of people make is that they think you could just sort of take the same pattern for a 1-button or just sort of put 2 more buttons in it.
Right.
And voila, you've gone from a 1-button to a 3-button. No.
Right.
But everything, you have to rebalance the entire coat. I'll show you, I'll give you an example. So here's if you would hold this up.
Yeah.
And I'll show you a 1-button that I just redesigned. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
This is a 1-button I just redesigned. Okay?
Right.
And this is another 1-button that I had previously designed.
It's the old 1-button.
This is the old 1-button.
With a longer lapel.
With a longer lapel. So if you look at these 3 jackets, if you hold that jacket up to the camera, just hold it up to the camera, they look completely different.
They do.
All of them, they look completely different.
Yes.
And these are 1-buttons. These are 1-buttons. That's the 3-button. And the reason they look
these two look a little bit closer.
Absolutely, because of some of the design elements are similar, like the longer collar,
right?
Shorter lapel.
Well, this has got a much longer collar than this one,
right? It's about the same, but
is it?
They've got both short lapels, and I redesigned this specifically because it's sort of more of an sort of old world look.
Yes, it is.
This is more of a contemporary look, sort of a longer lapel.
Yes.
So the point I'm making, Pete, is that when you think about design, these things matter. These really small elements, you might think they don't, but just moving the collar a little bit down or up,
Yes.
or sort of the lapel upper, it changes the entire appearance of the garment.
And then you've got obviously different molding of the
Well, I
shape
mean,
there.
you can sort of, it depends on how you want to roll the lapel. But again, the point being that for a two-button jacket, it would be, the proportions would have to be different.
Right, okay.
Right? The proportions,
So you can't just make a long lapel like that.
No, you can't do that. You can't do that. So everything we do fundamentally, and, we have to recreate and rebalance it, even sort of the positioning of the pocket, the length of the coat. It's all different. This is a two-button coat, for instance.
That's a two-button coat. Now, is this jacket length then a little shorter?
This is longer than this, what I'm wearing. This jacket is longer.
Interesting.
Exactly, because a three-button jacket needs a little bit more length.
Yes.
And we designed this for taller people.
Right.
Because a lot of tall gentlemen on the blog have been asking, well, for us tall gentlemen, we'd like to have a three-button option. So the three-button coat is cut slightly longer, sort of a classic length.
Yes.
Longer than the two-button, which I'm wearing, which is the office coat.
Now, when you say cut longer, what do you mean, 1 inch longer?
About an inch.
So a 6-foot man will get a 1 inch longer jacket.
Something like that. But 1 inch makes a lot of difference.
Well, this is curious.
It doesn't seem like a lot.
You're probably looking at the collar that they have about 30 inches.
Right. So an inch, it doesn't seem like a lot, but once you start to rebalance all the features of the coat, it makes a huge difference.
So if you ask your tailor when he measures you, or if with AskOkey, of course, you measure yourself, but when they talk about the length of the jacket from the neck to the hem, they're talking about usually, as I said, about 30 inches probably.
So some people, mine is about 32, 33.
So the extra 1 inch actually makes it, you can actually notice that, is what you're saying.
Yeah, you'll notice.
Isn't that interesting, you see? Because these are the things that people who aren't designers or aren't tailors don't think about, and yet you could probably, once you've got some experience, maybe your IG University students now can do this. When they look at a jacket in the shop, for example, or somebody's wearing it, they can actually see if it's a little too long or a little too short. And that interesting thing about the collar length, you see, because it doesn't naturally occur to somebody that might be an issue. We've talked a bit about jackets. Thank you for that information, and I'm sure everybody out there has benefited from hearing about that. Now, the other question is the three-piece suit. The three-piece suit, okay, does the waistcoat have to be the same color as the jacket and the trousers have to be?
Well, that is what a three-piece suit is. It means it's the same suit in three pieces.
Okay, so let me rephrase that. What can you do if you want to wear a different colored waistcoat?
Well, that's called an odd waistcoat.
An odd waistcoat, okay. So are there any rules about it?
Well, there are no specific rules as long as they are probably coordinated in the same way that it's an accessory.
Right. Okay.
An odd waistcoat is an accessory, no less than, in no less a manner as your tie or your or your pocket square or your hat or your socks might be. And so, when used as an accessory, when an odd waistcoat is used as an accessory, it needs to be coherent. It needs to be coherent with the rest of the outfit.
Right.
So, and that's about it. And it's just sort of an accessory to lift the outfit.
And speaking of waistcoats, let's take a look here at one. Now this is quite a specimen. You are fond of the double-breasted waistcoat.
I love them.
Yes.
They're very classic. They don't make them this way anymore to start with.
Indeed.
They don't even make good waistcoats, period, even single-breasted.
Now, let's catch that before I lose the thought. Why not? What is it that makes a good waistcoat?
Well, if you remember, Pete, and I think we touched on this during the first podcast, why a lot of men stopped wearing high-rise trousers. And in fact, it was
I'd forgotten that.
It was you who came up with the theory that people stopped wearing high-rise trousers because they stopped wearing waistcoats.
Did I? Okay.
Yes, I recall you made that specific point.
I may have done.
And the reason is with high-rise trousers, and if you look at the way we cut our waistcoats, they're short.
Yes,
right.
Because literally your waist is...
that's your waist, absolutely.
Waist is here, yes.
And so they're cut just to cover the waistband of the trouser, and they're meant to be worn with high-rise trousers. And so if you wore this with regular low-rise trousers or medium, there would be a gap.
Indeed.
And that's why you see a lot of waistcoats in the market today are too long.
They're very long, yes.
And they have to be long in order to conceal the shirt.
Yes, okay.
Because trousers are worn lower.
Sure.
And it just doesn't look as artistic. It doesn't look, the proportions are off.
Yes.
If you understand what I mean.
I do.
So we've designed these waistcoats in the classic way as they ought to be, sort of very short, and they are waistcoats as the name infers.
Waistcoat, everybody.
Not
waistcoat.
Not hip.
Not hip coat.
Not hip coat. Not crotch coat. Not seat. Not seat coat. They're waistcoats. So we cut them to stop right at the waist. And these pair very well with the high-rise trousers because the trousers stop just about there.
Yes.
And it allows the onlooker to see that long leg line.
Right. And of course, what it does is if you've got a narrow waist, it kind of accentuates narrow waist.
Absolutely.
But these...
Absolutely.
And then this is made, it's got the same fabric.
In the back.
On the back. Now, that's a little unusual because normally you have like a satin or a shiny material.
Absolutely. And the reason you have those shiny fabrics in the back, one is to save on cloth.
Right.
And because a lot of waistcoats are worn as part of a three-piece suit.
Yep.
And so you don't really see the satin or the lining in the back. You just see sort of the front of the coat. Now, our own unique idea behind this coat is that they should be worn as true odd coats. Right. In other words, they should be odd coats that you can wear without a jacket.
You could, indeed.
If you opt not to wear a jacket, you can still look quite dressy.
Yes, you could.
In a pair of high-rise trousers and a waistcoat like that, with your hat and still look very unique.
Yes.
And so that's why we've gone for the 360 look. On the waistcoats. That way it looks like a complete coat and not look like an undergarment essentially, which.
But it does have a regular lining
on the inside,
satin lining
on the inside. Of course, it does have. It has to be lined because it goes.
But it doesn't have a canvas.
No. These are not made with. There's no structure in there. There doesn't need to be a structure because it sits close to your body.
It does. Yeah.
The difference between a waistcoat and a jacket is that a waistcoat should sit very close. It's really kind of a body coat.
Yep.
And so again, the idea is to it's cut very close to the body. And if you've got sort of, let's say, an athletic figure, right, what it does is that it enhances your athletic features, if you understand what I mean.
Absolutely.
And so it's meant to be cut really close to the body. Whereas the jacket itself, right, is a structure that is built and hoisted on the body.
And sits on top of it.
It floats around on top absolutely floats on the body. So that is the main difference between the waistcoat and the jacket, and hence a waistcoat does not require any structure.
And
because it's just a piece of cloth that you wrap around you.
And this one has quite wide lapels. So what would you wear on, if you were going to wear a jacket on top of it? I presume obviously a single-breasted jacket.
Certainly.
Would it be the long lapelled or the three-button jacket?
It really doesn't matter. The point is that obviously when you wear a waistcoat, your jacket should be worn open, of course. Most times your jacket should be worn open to show off the waistcoat. Something like this, you definitely, I've seen them worn with double-breasted jackets even, but that's just sort of a personal preference. Of course, you can't walk around with your double-breasted jacket unbuttoned. That is just not proper.
But it used to be that double-breasted suits regularly had single-breasted waistcoats. It was a very regular thing.
Yes, and the reason for that, Pete, is that because the closing of the waistcoat on the double-breasted waistcoat is high.
Mm-hmm.
So
on the single-breasted waistcoat.
On the single-breasted waistcoat is high. So it peaks above the crossover of the double-breasted, especially if the double-breasted jacket is cut with a low crossover. Mm-hmm. You're able to see the waistcoat inside.
Yep.
And so that you can also do. It's just, again, it's a question of choice. But the more traditional way to wear a waistcoat is typically with single-breasted coats.
And supposing somebody were going to wear this one, would you think darker trousers or lighter trousers?
Both. Okay. It's all about contrast, right? Okay. So if you're going to go darker, of course, you're going to go like sort of your charcoal grays or your darker grays, or even a navy pair of trousers, something darker to provide contrast. Then if you're going to go lighter, you have to go really, really light.
Okay, so almost white.
Almost white, or like an off-white, like even a cricket, a cricket white. Right? A cream flannel, cricket white flannel could work with something like this.
Interesting. And you could have one, I suppose, with just a regular back to wear under a jacket.
Of course. I mean, you can wear this under a jacket. It's just...
It'd be quite warm.
It could be, but I mean, if you're wearing it in the fall or sort of in the cooler seasons, right? Because this is wool, right? So this is sort of a cool season fabric. I mean, something like this you could wear under a tweed jacket and you don't need an overcoat.
You probably wouldn't. Now, looking at this, there's something that comes to mind. And it's a question that I've had. What is it? Do you think that if you look at these, you'll see that, very interestingly, there's a continuous line there. Mm-hmm. And there's pretty much a continuous line there. Mm-hmm. But for example, here, they don't entirely line up, the checks. Mm-hmm. And here, for example, they don't entirely line up here. Mm-hmm. What is your view on that? Because I know some people think they should always line up and other people don't care.
Yeah, well, I mean, for waistcoats, it's sort of, that's sort of being pedantic in my view. But for jackets, of course, you have to, it's called pattern matching. So for the jackets, obviously, we're very, the pattern matching is very elaborate. We're very careful in ensuring that sort of the lines are continuous and so on and so forth. For a waistcoat, it's just, like I said, it's an inner garment. And besides, you need a lot of fabric. If you insist on matching, you need a whole lot of fabric.
That's why I was thinking of this. You need an
enormous amount of fabric. So are you going to go buy 3 meters of cloth just so you can make a waistcoat that really requires maybe 80 centimeters?
Yes.
No.
Is that about what it would require?
Yeah, this is about 80 centimeters. About
a yard.
For the back and forth, we use about 1.2, 1.3 meters for the 360. But if you were just the facing, just the front, we could, for the average person, we could do it in 80 centimeters, which is 0.8 meters.
It was almost a yard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And that's without bothering to try to get the matching pattern. I notice also you've got darts in the back here.
Yeah, because I have a narrow waist.
This is for me. You, yes. Okay.
For me, I have a narrow waist, so, you need those darts to sort of bring in the shape.
Yes, you would. Isn't that interesting? So, double-breasted waistcoats, and of course, one of the advantages of coming here to Studio One is I get to sit and admire all this finery, and you've got some single-breasted waistcoats over there, I notice. A lot of odd waistcoats. You obviously like odd waistcoats, but I never see you wearing them.
Well, because it's getting warmer.
Okay.
And a lot of them came in just at the end of the cool season.
Right, okay.
We finished, we haven't actually officially launched them.
Yes.
But a lot of, I designed them last fall and they went into production and they started coming out of production, say, just at the end of winter sort of one spring was. So I wear them occasionally, but it's getting a bit warm. So,
Yes.
Once it starts getting cooler again, you'll probably see me in a lot of those.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that because a blaze of color from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, there's a lot of color.
And unfortunately, the audience can't see them.
Yeah.
Take my word for it, audience. It is a kaleidoscope.
Highly curated.
Highly curated, yes. Yes. Now, finally, so if we think about the suit and the jacket and all that we've discussed this evening, then we get to the shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've noticed, Okey, that you are not a great fan of colored shirts.
Mm-hmm.
So we never see you wearing like a maroon shirt or a dark green shirt. Even when you could design the entire outfit, if you see what I mean. I mean, you choose the cloth for the jacket and the trousers, so you could also at the same time choose the fabric for, say, 5 shirts, which would give you a good rotation. But you don't. No. So is there, in your opinion, then, as a what do you call it, of this subject, an expert, is there a place for maroon-colored shirts or dark blue shirts or dark gray shirts?
Pete, you and I had this conversation some time ago during one of these chats. I remember, again, I was sitting here, you were sitting there. We talked about shirts at length.
Okay.
And I'm always of the view, I mean, I have a
well, I know the canvas, I know.
Yeah, I have a principle philosophy that the shirt is a canvas of a painting.
But what about for if you're not going to wear a tie, for example, if it's on the weekend and you have, for example, a jacket like this one and you think maybe a dark brown shirt or something?
I just think darker shirts closer to the body than the jacket, it always comes off looking cheap.
Interesting.
Very rarely, very seldom do I see it pulled off properly. The only thing I would think about was maybe kind of a navy shirt, like a very dark shirt, and let's say a lighter blue jacket.
Right.
Something like that, or maybe, like you said, a beige jacket with a darker brown shirt underneath. But it needs to be done very deftly.
Curated, as you say.
It needs to be done very deftly, and not many people have the sophistication or taste to pull that off. And so I always recommend, to err on the side of caution. Always sort of ensure that your shirts are lighter.
Yes.
It's sort of like a sliding scale. The closer you get to your body, the lighter the garment.
No, I've heard you say that, but I thought I'd just not pull your leg, but just see if I could get if you changed your mind.
I mean,
you
look at most of our shirts here in the studio are white and blue, and recently we introduced some pastels for the spring.
Yes.
But even the pastels, I insist on very low saturation pastels.
Right. Okay.
So sort of the pinks and the yellows and so on and so forth, they're not kind of sun yellow or shocking pink.
Yes.
It's always a very faint pink, just to introduce a little bit of color.
So no red shirts?
Oh, no, please.
No? Okay.
No, sir. Okay. Red, it depends. We do have there's a beautiful red kind of, it's sort of, it's a gingham check.
Right.
But it's a gingham check, but with a white background.
Low saturation.
So again, very low saturation.
Okay.
That is something you could wear with a navy suit, for instance. If you wanted to try something a little bit different.
On a contrast day,
you could wear with a navy suit and a navy tie, and it comes off really well.
Well, it's interesting, but the reason I'm asking is because if you look at companies that make shirts, particularly what's available and ready to wear, you often get quite broad stripes, quite bold stripes.
Of course.
Checks. And what I've noticed is that if you have a shirt with a lot of busyness in it, it can be a bit difficult to choose a tie.
Again, we talked about this before.
You almost need a solid tie, don't you? And I mean,
it's not only the tie, it makes it very difficult to dress it up.
Yeah.
Because when you make the shirt is supposed to be the silent partner.
Right, okay. Got
right?
Got
in
that.
everything, when you're putting together the ensemble. The shirt should be, like you said, it should be seen but not heard.
Seen but not heard. So what we get to then with all of this is that the world of menswear is a sort of ever-evolving stream, so that in a way you could never run out of things. I mean, you could always get shirts in slightly different patterns or slightly different colors. You can get suits and jackets made of different material, say similar colors but in different fabric. And you could almost spend a lifetime studying it in a way, couldn't you? I mean, just what you've been saying this evening about the difference between the 2 and 3 button jackets, which most of us would never occur to us to think about that. It's so, in terms of color, in terms of fabric, in terms of design, construction, there's a sort of infinite variety of things, isn't there?
It's a rabbit hole.
Yes, it really is a rabbit hole, and obviously it exercises many of us. Other people are not exercised by it at all. I think some people wear clothes simply because the law requires that they wear them, and were the law not so to require, they would be quite happy to forget about it, especially if they live in warm weather. No, do you know what I mean? For so many people, it's a chore. It's a bit of a burden. So, I've got to get a suit for the office, and so they'll obviously tend to spend as little time on it as possible. Whereas others, and you might be at the end of that end of the spectrum, are interested in it to a point that I won't say it becomes an obsession, but it's certainly an absorbing pastime or an abiding interest. And of course, being in the business yourself, I presume that having been a hobbyist for years, you were able to bring an awful lot of knowledge to the business that other people wouldn't be able to if they just thought, wouldn't it be fun to have a clothing company? As opposed to somebody like you who's involved in so many aspects of it because of your knowing so much about it when you came into it.
Well, it's a loaded question. The first part of the question is, why do people still dress up or see why are there still aficionados who insist on dressing properly? And then the second part of your question was, what influence did your time as a hobbyist, so to speak, have on your current position as a professional, as it were, as a practitioner in the industry? So the first part is, look, I've made an observation in most people that I've come across along this path. And not just, I've been writing on I've kept a blog, as you know, as you're aware, for many years. And it attracts a certain type of people. And when I look across the board, a very certain type of people, one, they're usually intellectually curious.
Right.
Usually they are intellectually curious. Usually they're quite good in several other areas, or let's say they're quite accomplished.
Right.
They're very thoughtful people.
Right.
Again, I'm just sort of speaking generally.
Sure.
I'm not saying it applies to everyone, but
they come from quite a
they're
broad background.
Yeah, broad. I mean, the background, the ethnicity, culture is different. When you look at the personality of these individuals, you start to see similarities.
Yes.
I mean, I run a class, so I can I can gauge. I'm in a unique position to be able to observe across the board.
Of course, because then this takes us right back to the IG University where we started.
Absolutely. And what I noticed that every one of these individuals, different cultures, different countries, different, but the personalities, I start to sort of see clusters of character.
Isn't that
sort of character traits.
Isn't that interesting?
And so I think that anyone who's thoughtful about life,
right?
And I don't mean it in, clothes are just one element of that.
True.
Or proper dress is just one element of that.
True.
And if you're thoughtful about your approach to life and the type of life that you want to lead,
right,
then you should care about how you present yourself to the world.
Indeed. I mean, it seems obvious, doesn't it?
Well, sometimes the obvious is not so obvious.
Well, exactly. But that's why I said it seems.
So that's, you will find again that a lot of people who are slovenly or don't care, if you bother to scratch beneath the surface and look at some of them might be geniuses in, say, a very narrow subset of areas, but you will find that several areas of their lives are a mess.
Very possibly, yes.
It's very, in my experience, to see someone who is very thoughtful about their appearance or sort of their presentation, who is also not well ordered in many other areas of their life.
I can.
So I don't think, and I've said this before on one of our prior, either our prior dialogues or a monologue, that for a lot of the people that I observe in this community, having tailored clothes, is more of a necessity.
Not an indulgence.
It's not an indulgence. Right. It's more sort of a personal. It's something that completes the man.
Right. Okay.
Or the woman, as you wear.
Sure.
It's something that completes the person. Yes. They may not know it themselves.
Indeed, they may not.
Sometimes you're searching for something to sort of complete you, and you may not know that that's why you're so drawn to what one might call sort of the expression of perfection.
Indeed. In fact, I think
tailored clothes.
I think probably a lot of people don't think about it. And of course,
so because it's subconscious.
It's subconscious.
You do it subconsciously. You have an image of a character you want to be.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You have that image of a character. You pursue that ideal through your education, through your reading, through all other means, acculturation, what have you. And the way you present yourself in tailored clothes, it's just one of those things. And sometimes we do it subconsciously without knowing that what we're really trying to do is to complete ourselves.
Yes, of course. And then
not really for the sake of being a clothes horse.
Indeed. And so one of the things that obviously that you need if you're going to do this is some knowledge. And of course, that's where takes us back to the IG University. And you were talking about the guys that come on there, the students or the participants.
Mm-hmm.
How old are they?
Quite a wide range.
Yeah.
Quite a wide range. I see everything from 17-year-olds, very well dressed.
Really?
You would be quite pleasantly shocked.
Yeah.
Some of them very, very, some of them just precocious beyond their years.
Right.
And what I find is that especially those young ones, the 17, 18-year-olds that are interested in classic dress, when you dig deeper into their lives, they're so precocious and sophisticated, far beyond their years.
Interesting.
When you get to know them better.
Interesting, yes.
So that's why I say you start to see these clusters and you start to sort of wonder, is it just an accident that such people are drawn to the image of perfection?
Well, like attracts like, don't forget. So if they're out there looking around for people who are doing what they would like to be doing, then logically they're eventually going to come to your location there on Instagram. But
and there are, of course, there's older people in their 50s, 60s, 70s even, who bring a lot of experience and value to the discussions. There's Sir Ross, if you're watching this, there's a gentleman named Russell, who's been having his clothes made at Huntsman for 20 years.
Wow.
And he's there every day. And so every now and then he chimes in with his own 2 cents, and he's got a wealth of knowledge, and experience. So you also have people like that who've been avid consumers of bespoke clothing for very many years.
Well, Huntsman, of course, is Huntsman's in London. That's the one on Savile Row.
Correct.
And what you'll notice about, I don't know if Huntsman has gone this route, but there's an increasing tendency among those very famous makers to scale down in terms of they've got the higher end of the market, and then now they're trying to get the lower end of the market. And I've noticed one of them has even got a thing called made in England and made overseas. And there's a pricing difference there. But if somebody's been going to Huntsman and actually engaging with the tailors, he would learn a lot after a while. But 20 years is quite a long time to be doing that.
Yeah.
So you'd, in the course of buying maybe a couple of dozen suits, which wouldn't be necessarily excessive, you would probably pick up quite a bit of knowledge, because they're obviously the men that work at Huntsman's are experts in their field.
Trade.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Oki. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for listening or watching. And I've learned a lot this evening, and I hope that all of the rest of you have likewise benefited from the chat that Oki and I have been having. And we look forward to seeing you next time on the Ask Oki podcast. Good evening or good morning, for that matter, wherever you are.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pete. Good having you. It's good to have you in Studio One as always.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.